Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to the first session of this two-day conference. This is the first undergraduate research session. In this session we're going to have four presentations by four final year project teams, because I'm sure you're a team by now. Okay, so our first team is going to be from the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department, and we have five presenters: Rimah, Rana, Lara, Lin, and Sarah. And they're going to tell us about porous concrete pavement and how exciting that is and how sustainable that is. So please, let's welcome them. They have 30 minutes to present, and then after that we have 2 minutes of Q&A. So please try not to interrupt them till they finish. Okay, come in please, guys.
Okay. He said to wait. هلا عندي Yes. But we are waiting for 1 moment. Okay. Okay. He's here. Okay. Should we start? Hello everyone, my name is Rana Kanaan and here are my colleagues Rimah Halali, Lara Matraji, Lin Risha and Sarah Sinno, and we are going to be presenting our research project, which is porous concrete pavement, a rainwater harvesting and purification system. So the outline of our presentation is going to be the following: the introduction, literature review, methodology, results and analysis, as well as the conclusion. So in the MENA region, we have a lot of water resources shortages because the climate is not really favorable for rainfall events and collecting waters. As you can see, the Middle East and North Africa region is the one with the least amount of actual renewable water resources per capita per region per year. So some of the countries like the United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia have found a solution to these problems. They are using desalination in order to provide potable and domestic water for their residents 24/7. However, in Lebanon, this is not the case. In Lebanon, we do actually have rainfall events, unlike other countries in the Gulf or Northern African countries. But there are no, however, there are no water for everyone. If I ask you the question, how many of you have faced water shortages in their houses and had to call a private distributor in order to fill your tanks, I'm sure that most of you would raise their hand. This is because there is a very poor harvesting system, there are no storage infrastructure that are well in Lebanon, and there's a deteriorated distribution network. So as you can see, also, in Lebanon, during the wet season, we have Beirut that is flooded most of the wet season. And instead of being infiltrated, the water is being wasted as runoff. And with the recent waste crisis that we have faced, we can see that the runoff water has been polluted, and the little water that penetrates into the aquifers is polluted, so it contaminates them. So the water we are using from the aquifers is not suitable for direct use. So our proposed system, after looking into the literature review, is using porous concrete pavement. This proposed design is having a porous concrete layer where the rainfall would penetrate the layer into the base, and we looked into the addition of an absorbent layer in order to enhance the water purification system. And then we would collect the water and distribute it for domestic use. And now we will continue with the literature review with Rimah.
Several effort has been invested in order to further develop the porous pavement technology, whether on concrete or asphalt. Locally, there was an application of porous concrete pavement in Lebanon, in Arik Bika. It was a smaller area in the parking lot in Arik Bika. We got to visit Arik and actually examine this porous pavement, which shows that it's still infiltrating water after 1 year of installation. We relied in our design to get the structural composition of a concrete mix on previous literature, which was determined by 20% voids, 20% binding mortar, and 0.38 water to cement ratio. Those were the pictures taken during our visit to Arik. And those pictures were provided to us during the construction process of the porous concrete pavement in Arik, and you can see in the picture the spreading of the aggregates and the actual final output. We looked into previous research and found out that porous concrete pavement has a purifying capability on its own. So we looked also into adding this purifying capability by introducing adsorbents. We looked into two main adsorbents: activated carbon, which is universally known purifying agent due to its porous nature, which increases the adsorption capability. Previous literature had showed that installation of activated carbon in the concrete mix did not yield any positive results. So we're looking into adding a separate layer of the adsorbent to further enhance the contact between water and the adsorbent. We looked into a second adsorbent, which is biochar. Biochar is the product of thermal conversion of waste biomass. It is a completely sustainable material, and it has a highly porous nature, similar to that of activated carbon, which proves that it has a sorption potential. Now we're going to proceed with the methodology with Sarah.
Our project was divided into 3 phases. The first phase was the design of the concrete layer. To design it, we tried 3 samples, 12.5 millimeters aggregates, 19 millimeters, and 25 millimeters. As you can see in the picture, when the aggregate size is small, the pores are smaller, which makes the concrete layer more prone to getting clogged. And we can see in the pictures that the surface of the concrete is rough. We tried to test the skid resistance in the lab, but the results were inconclusive. This is why the resistance should be tested again when the pavement is actually constructed using different methods. For our samples, we measured the porosity and we measured the compressive strength. The porosity increases with the size of the aggregates, and we decided to proceed with the 19 millimeters aggregates because it has a higher porosity, and the compressive strength fall within the range of the typical compressive strengths for porous concrete pavements. Our second phase was the design of the base. Our base was a 40 centimeters aggregate base. In our first sample, the base was made of well-graded and mixed aggregates of 25, 19, and 12.5 millimeters aggregates. And the second sample was putting those aggregates as single-sized aggregates in separate layers. We measured the infiltration rate of our system. The concrete showed that it is able to infiltrate almost all the water. The well-graded base and the concrete has an infiltration rate of 3.36 centimeters per minute, but the multi-layered was 7.44. We decided to proceed with the well-graded base because it's easier to get a well-graded mix of aggregates and constructed than getting a single-sized aggregates and placing every layer alone. It's for constructability issues. Our third phase was placing the adsorbent within our system. The adsorbents we're using are fine material and they can penetrate within the pores of the aggregates. This is why we put them in nylon porous bags and we compacted them within the aggregates layer. As you can see, this is the compacted layer of adsorbent. To test the effectiveness of the filtration of our system, we needed to assess first the runoff water that's present in Beirut. We collected water from 2 designated areas, Bliss Streets and OSB parkings. We chose those areas because they are at an intersection of sloped roads and the water can accumulate and we can collect it. The first one was at an intersection of Jeanne d'Arc and Bliss, and the second one was near OSB parking where there's a lot of traffic, people waiting to get into the parking, so the water most probably will be more polluted. And the results were as follows.
We used these results in order to synthesize our own water. So we synthesized our own water because the water collected was not enough to do all of the future testing. After doing our synthesized water, we took these 6 samples: the synthetic water, the water with the pavement, water with activated carbon, water with biochar, combined the effect of pavement and activated carbon, and pavement and biochar. And we got all of these results that we're gonna highlight. Regarding heavy metals, we know that heavy metals are very dangerous for human health, so we shouldn't have heavy metals in the effluent. We see a decrease of 93 and 92% for copper and zinc, which is very good. It's almost it's a very high number of removal. For the TOC, we know that the total organic carbon, it decreases the available oxygen, and it increases the disinfection byproduct. So we have a decrease of 25% when using activated carbon with the pavement, and 20% when using activated carbon with biochar. So both numbers are good. Regarding turbidity, if we have a very turbid water, it will interfere with the disinfection, and it will provide a medium for a lot of microbial growth. So we see a 97% decrease in turbidity when using the pavement alone, which is almost 100%. But we faced a problem with the biochar, because the biochar is a waste material, so it was increasing the total suspended solids in the water, and thus increasing the turbidity by this big number. Regarding DO, the dissolved oxygen is very important in water because the level has to be higher than 7 milligram per liter to be aerated. Here we see that the best result was for the pavement with activated carbon, since it has the highest value of 7.3. And finally, for the pH, we started with an acidic water at pH below level 6.19, and the 3 cases were very good, since we have an increase in pH to make it in the good range.
So to put it into perspective, what we have done is that we took previous research that was done on porous concrete pavement, and we added an environmental aspect to it, since we realized that not much research was done on this subject. And then we tested 3 samples that were made of pavement layer, and then this pavement layer is overlaying a well-graded aggregate base. And then we tested for 3 cases, one with having no adsorbent in between the aggregates, one having activated carbon in between the aggregates, and one having biochar between the aggregates. And what we have got, the result that we got showed that the best results were found for the base with having activated carbon. And now I'm going to demonstrate, to show you a demonstration of showing the difference in color of the outflow water and the inflow water that comes into the system. And as we can see, the water that we used is very dark colored and very turbid. And as the water goes through the pavement and the aggregate base, we can see that the water that comes out is much clearer than the water that came into the system. And however, the water is still very turbid. Another observation that we had is that the type of aggregates that we used into the system affected the quality of the water. Since we used the limestone aggregates, which have calcium carbonates in them, and they leaked into the water. Therefore, to enhance this project, we should look more into the type of aggregates to use into the aggregate base. And also we faced a problem with biochar. The biochar was leaking in the water after water passed through the system. And therefore we should also look into finding ways of compacting the adsorbent layer or using coarser biochar material. Another solution to this problem would be to add a filter before the distribution of the water for its final use. Before concluding this presentation, I would like to thank our advisors, Dr. Hassan Shab and Dr. Rana Bilbaisi, and all the lab staff at EUB who have helped us a lot during this project. And thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll take some questions now. Please move to center stage. All right. Yes, Dr. Ayub.
Now, what is the porosity? What worried that with time these pores will get clogged. How will you clean them?
There is studies on how to clean the porous concrete pavement, and the most effective one is by back flushing.
Backwashing, how are you going to backwash?
You put high pressure
This is a pavement.
Yes, but
And
there is
below it is it's not accessible.
no. There is a collection pipe, and this pipe you can add a pressured water, and then it can back flush all the clogged material.
There is also
You're
another.
going to spend more water than what you collect.
There are other methods. You can vacuum.
Number two, you are using an absorber, activated carbon. You know that activated carbon has a certain capacity, which means if you operate it for a certain while, it will get exhausted. And when it gets exhausted, you have to regenerate it. How will you take out activated carbon and regenerate it?
This is why we were testing how to use other adsorbents. Like we tried
What do you
the
think
activated
you should have
carbon.
thought about these things? There is something called sustainability. Whenever you think of an idea, it has to be sustainable. When you do research, your end product should be sustainable. I'm sorry about this, but you should have thought about these things. The idea, the general idea is good. You are trying to save water and get water, but it has to be a practical approach.
Well, perhaps here I can speak on this behalf. 100% of pavements in Netherlands are porous. 100%. And they back flush them and clean them using a specialized truck every weekend. 60 to 70% of new highways in the US are porous now. So this is the trend for the future.
Why is the porosity introduced?
Because we want to collect to avoid flash floods and to preserve water, and as the drainage system, effective drainage system, to reduce slippage of loss of friction at the top.
I do appreciate those.
No, really, 100% of Netherlands roads are porous.
The title is, what is your title? The title of the paper? Of the research.
Purification. But we have shown
Can
that the
you look at
pavement
the title?
alone also it helps purifying the water. So when the activated carbon stops working, there's still some time for the water
Porous
to
concrete,
purify.
rainwater harvesting and purification system. I don't know.
That's how they store
But the
water.
pavement alone is
In Texas now.
necessary.
In Texas, where it rains only once or twice a year,
I have a big
they have.
question.
But there are huge.
Okay, if I may, another question, if I may,
That's
but
a good benefit
small
now.
comment.
In Texas right now, in Texas, I'm going to stand and say to everybody. In Texas right now, we are collecting rainwater and harvesting it because it rains once or twice. I can take you and show you in my office, have some videos about it. That's where research has led us in the United States and other countries. If we don't want to follow them, then that's our choice.
Sir, and
If I may, but
Dr. Sadir,
if I may, but this is, if we put it in the context, I think this is a proof of concept. They are exploring this as an option. I don't think they optimized all aspects of the design for the purpose of actual use. I think once they see promising results, they go to the next step. And this is how I read it. And I think they are to be, as a first step, I think they are to be commended. If they stop their work here, maybe the questions that you are raising, Dr. Ayub, are key. But I don't think that they intend to do that.
You see, the issue is, you have taken a course on water treatment. All right?
أنا أخدم من كذا
And
زمان.
they should make use of that course in their work. This is the objective of teaching you. This is the objective of teaching you. To use the material that you have learned in such a study.
thank you for the comments. Thank you for presenting. Okay. Okay, so our next team is from the ECE department. Okay, and we have an interesting topic that's gonna tell us about how we localize cars and lanes using vehicle-to-vehicle communication. Okay, let me find your file, or you want to find it? We have 15 minutes, and then What is it? See it? Okay. Go ahead. 30 minutes.
Hi there, my name is Jawad Alami and here are my teammates Khalid and Afif. Today we are going to discuss our research topic, which is in lane localization of vehicles through learning from beacons. Here's a brief outline of our presentation. First, we are going to have a brief introduction about the motivation and related works. Then we are going to discuss the theory behind our approach, and finally we will present you some simulation results. So let's start with a brief background about the motivation behind our work. Current advanced driver assistant techniques systems in the market include adaptive cruise control, lane keeping assistance, automated parking assistance, and autopilot. These systems are highly effective, but suffer from their very high cost that would stand as a barrier that prevents them from being introduced to low-end cars. However, there are some driver assistance systems that can be introduced to all cars at almost no cost. These systems include lane departure detection, smart navigation assistance, and smart traffic control. With the proposed rule from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in the US, all new cars are required to have vehicle-to-vehicle communication capabilities. This has opened the door for our approach, which makes use of this communication between vehicles and tries to reduce the error of the global positioning system that is currently present. Now I leave the stage for my friend Afif to talk about the related works.
Okay, so we see that the localization of vehicles within a lane is gaining very immense importance in self-driving cars. The most widespread method is, of course, using cameras. And this method, we just localize the boundaries of the road and we fit the car within a lane of the road. An important example, for example, we have Tesla. In the current models S and X, for example, Tesla uses around 8 cameras in addition to ultrasonic sensors for its autopilot system. This might be quite expensive and is prone to the weather conditions as mentioned earlier. Also, we have vehicle-to-vehicle communication. This method, we're going to use it in our own system design. Vehicles communicate with each other, share certain informations, and increase their own position accuracy. Sensor-driven detection, using gyroscopes and speedometers, we can determine certain deviation of the driving and determine if there's a shift or a U-turn, for example, or something like that. Another very widespread method is, of course, GPS. GPS is used in many applications. For example, Google Maps uses GPS. But this method, we cannot actually localize a car within a lane because it's very inaccurate. In good conditions, it has accuracy of around 5 to 10 meters. RSSI, it stands for Received Signal Strength Indicator. In short, our device emits a signal, it receives a signal. Comparing both strength, we determine the distance between us and the other device. This method, we can't really know the direction of the other device, we just know the range between us and the other device. How are we going to use some of these features in our own system design? Well, our design relies on 4 different components. The GPS of our own anchor car that's going to try to find its own position. It's going to communicate with the surrounding cars and determine using RSSI the distance and get the GPS of the surrounding cars. It's also going to use its own speed and the RSU. RSU, it stands for roadside unit. It's just beacons that are on the road and with which the car can communicate and transfer information. How are all the components going to work together? Well, first, the car receives its own GPS position. It's quite inaccurate. It communicates with the surrounding cars using 802.11p. We'll discuss that later. It uses RSSI, gets the distance between it and the other car, and the GPS position of the other car. Goes through our algorithm, we'll also discuss that later, and increases the accuracy of its GPS. We know the current GPS position, the car moves forward, it gets a new GPS position. Given the old GPS position and the speed, it has a new estimate, which will also help us increase the accuracy of the new GPS position. Why are we going to use the roadside unit? Well, whenever the car gets next to the roadside unit, it's going to use the roadside unit location instead of the GPS because it's much more accurate. How does the car know that it's next to the roadside unit? Well, of course, whenever the car gets closer to the roadside unit, the signal strength of the roadside unit increases. Whenever it moves past it, the signal decreases. When it reaches a maximum, we know that the car is next to the roadside unit. How does the accuracy of the roadside unit fluctuate? Well, whenever the car is next to the roadside unit, the accuracy is the highest. And that's where we're going to use it. We're only going to use the roadside unit when the car is right next to the roadside unit. How do cars communicate with each other? Where we said we're going to use 802.11p. It's the standard for vehicle-to-vehicle communication, and it's developed by IEEE. Okay, so now I'm going to leave the stage for Khalid. He's going to continue talking about the particle filter.
So the main part of our system is to decrease the error of the GPS distribution. So we use Bayesian filtering based on Monte Carlo sampling. Our distribution is presented as a set of particles. Each particle has a location and a weight. This weight represents the likelihood of this particle to be the exact location of the car. So the first step is to initialize all the particles with the weight from the probability distribution function from the GPS distribution. Since GPS can be estimated as a normal distribution, we use the PDF of the normal distribution. Then the particle filter mainly composed of two steps, prediction step and update step. In the prediction step, we use the data we have to predict the weights of the particles, and in the update step, every time we are given new data like a packet received from a neighbor car, we can update the weights of the particles and their location. So this is the equation of the update step. It composed, first we multiply the outgas of the position of the car with the probability given new RSSI measurement of the position. So we have an estimation based on the previous iterations and multiply it with the new information given when a car sends a packet to the reference car, and we divide by the normalization constant to get a new estimate of the probability of the location of the car. Also, since the car is mobile, it's moving, we need to update the location of the particles every period and every time we receive a packet from a neighbor car. So we use the ratio of the variances of my distribution and the car that sends the packet to decide the effect of the packet on the location of the particle. So we get a distance from the RSSI and use it to update the location of the particles. Also, when a car passes by a roadside unit, knowing that it has the exact location of the roadside unit and detects it's next to it when the signal becomes the maximum, it adjusts its distribution given the new data. So it minimizes the X error using those equations. So whenever we have the car becomes next to a roadside unit, it adjusts its distribution as shown in the figure. Also, when the car is near to the roadside unit but not next to it, we use it also to adjust the particle filter distribution using this equation. Since the RSSI measurement error increase as the distance increase, where the effect depends on the distance between roadside unit and the car. Also, starting any new period, we adjust the particle filter distribution using the speed and the new GPS given. This depends on a weight. That depends on the accuracy of the data we're given. So if the variance of the previous GPS is very accurate, we give more weight to the speed with the old GPS. And if the new GPS data is accurate, we give more weight to the GPS. So we have the direction of the car and with the road, and we have the speed and GPS given. Now Jad will talk about the simulation.
In our simulation, we relied on Sumo, which is a simulator that generates traffic, and MATLAB, where we implemented our algorithm. In our algorithm, we made, as previously mentioned by my colleague Khaled, we made use of a particle filter that we also made use of the RSU to reduce the error. Here are some results of our simulation. Those figures show the probability of the probability distribution function of the possible locations, where the yellow color and the dark blue colors represent the high and low the highest and lowest probability respectively. As you can see in the first figure, we only have one neighbor, so we have a curve-like shape for the high probability position. This is because the RSSI is used for the ranging, and so it gives a range of high probability. But as the number of neighbors increases, as shown in the two other figures, the curve shape is reduced to become approximately a circle with high probability. These metrics are analyzed through calculating the variance of the error. As you can see in the figures behind me, the variance along the x and the y axis are reduced significantly as the number of neighboring cars increases. Those results appear to be very promising because we only make use of data that's already available to us, and reduce the error of the current GPS position.
Okay, thank you, guys. We'll take some questions, and please, the next team, can you set up? Okay, Joe. Okay, our third team is from the engineering and management department, and they're gonna tell us how alert are our security personnel.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning. My colleagues and I, Hussein Jindi, Amin Lad, Ijad Mansour, and myself, Rashad Abu Karoum, we're going to be presenting our research, which is the effect of vigilance documents on the performance of security guards monitoring surveillance cameras. So the outline of this presentation, first we're going to start with the motivation and present the issue, then we're going to set the objectives to tackle this issue, and we're going to look into the future works. So, what is vigilance documents? Vigilance documents is described as the decrease in performance and efficiency in tasks that require vigilance, which means requires attention and alertness, like monitoring CCTV. CCTV is the feeds from surveillance cameras. So many studies, such as Harvard Medical School, showed that participants had a 30% error rate in visual screening tests. Also, a study in Britain found that the detection rate decreased from 85% to 45% when increasing the screens from 1 screen to 9 screens. So, why CCTV? In the UK, in the 1990s, approximately 78% of the crime prevention budget was spent on CCTV. Also, about £500 million of public money was invested in it. Also, just to mention, CCTV surveillance is a licensed profession that needs an approved training course over 3 days. This is not in Lebanon, this is outside of Lebanon. So, objectives. First, we need to. So the objectives are: first, we need to understand the effect of vigilance documents on the performance of a security guard in a control room using eye tracking. Then the second objective is to embed a prediction model to the CCTV interface to create a proactive approach solution, such as an adaptive interface for vigilance documents.
Okay, so why eye tracking? We chose eye tracking because, first of all, it's non-invasive. It means nothing is attached to the individual's body. Second of all, it can give very fast and real-time data. Third of all, it gives you accurate information on what the participant is focusing on and what's distracting them, and it was used a lot in literature. So in eye tracking, there are a lot of metrics. To start with, a fixation is when someone fixates their eye on the screen for a certain very short period of time. And a saccade is the distance between one fixation and another. So the metrics that we chose to focus on were the convex hull area, which is the area of vision spread across the screen, along with the spatial density, which is another spread metrics, like the convex hull area, which is how many parts of the screen were visited. The third metric was the scan path length, which is the summation of all these saccades. And finally, the nearest neighbor index. This is a relatively new metrics that wasn't used in literature before, and it's basically the counting all the randomness in the participant's vision. So, according to literature, these metrics, when vigilant decrements occur, the convex hull area and the spatial density, the spread metrics, decrease with time. The scan path length increases for a short period of time and then decreases. And finally, the nearest neighbor index, we couldn't find results for it, so after testing, we came up with the results. For the experiment design, we started by collecting videos from buildings and from offices. And we cut these videos and we manipulated them in a way so that the stimuli was people passing by. And we got these videos with the consent of the owners, and we blurred people's faces out. So our experiment design was the following. We decided on a 50-minute experiment, the first few minutes for training to teach the participants what to do. Another 20 minutes for them to look at the videos and the feeds, and if they saw the stimuli occurring, which is people passing by, they had to click on the screen. So, for example, this 6-feed video screen, if someone was passing by in the second video, the user would have to click on the screen. And then another 5-minute break, which was common for everyone, and they had to watch a common video. And then another 20-minute with another 9-feed screen. So these 20 minutes had either six feeds or 9 feeds, and they were counterbalanced, meaning that if, let's say I was performing the experiment, I watched the 6 videos first and then I watched the 9 videos, the second user would watch the 9 videos first and then the 6 videos. We used it, well, our participants were 10 AB students. They represented guards because this was a relatively easy task and didn't need much expertise. We used the Tobii Eye tracker in the ergonomics lab at SRB, and they didn't have any compensation, and they were asked to fill questionnaires by the end. So our independent variables were either the 6 feeds or the 9 feeds, and the dependent variables were the 4 eye tracking metrics, the response time, meaning that the point where the stimuli occurred until the participant clicked on the screen, and the error rate, meaning that when they missed a certain stimuli. It's worthy to note that all these videos were black and white, and inside the 6 feeds, for example, these videos were as well counterbalanced, meaning that if I watched order 1 to 6, someone else would watch a different order. We did all of that to filter out the randomness. Actually, to add counterbalancing, and we did an within subject variation, meaning that the same person watched 6 and 9 videos, and the rate of stimuli was common between the 6 and the 9 videos.
After running our experiment, we needed a metric to use to be able to, one, confirm if vigilance does occur, and 2, to confirm when it does occur. The metric we chose was the easiest metric that has the most literature, which is the error rate. As we all know, as the error rate, as you get less and less vigilance, your error rate will increase. As you can see in this graph, we split our data into 10 equal 2-minute intervals and calculated the error rate for each interval independently. As you can see, the first 4 intervals show a decrease throughout them, and then afterwards you see a sharp increase and a plateauing of sorts. This sharp increase and plateauing will confirm to us that vigilance does occur, and it occurs after 8 minutes, which conforms with our literature. After doing the error rates, we moved on to finding the different eye tracking metrics and seeing the effect of vigilance on them. First, we started with the convex hull, which, as you can see for the 6 video feed, decreased throughout the experiment. However, for the 9 video feed, it was almost a stable straight line. The spatial density gave us some interesting values, with the 9 video feeds almost looking like an inverted parabola, and the 6 video feeds almost looking like a straight line. Moving on to the scan path length, which, as Jad mentioned, is the sum of all the different saccades in the experiment. As you can see, the pattern between both 6 and 9 videos was almost the same, with a small increase before a large decrease, and then another plateauing of sorts. The NNI, which again is one of the new metrics, was also showed a straight line. Also conformed to both our previous data, and it was a straight line that increased throughout the entire experiment. And now Hussein will talk about our discussion of our objectives.
So as we saw before, for the 6 videos and the 9 videos, some metrics were unstable in different difficulties. For example, scan path decreases in 6, increases in 9, and stuff like that. So to remove this non-consistency, we decided to divide our 2-minute intervals into 2 8-minute intervals and average the results out for different metrics, and that's how they should look. So the first phase would include 4 2-minute intervals adding up to 8 minutes, and the same for phase B. And after we did that, we ran a 2-way repeated measures ANOVA to check for significance between the phases and different metrics. We found out that there was a significant main effect for different metrics, as we can see here with the p-values. For the convex hull, spatial density, scan path length, and NNI, there was main effects of phases on the metrics between a vigilant state and a non-vigilant state. So to put all these numbers into words, we saw that the convex hull, the spatial density, and the scan path length decrease when approaching a vigilant state, And we know that these metrics are spread metrics. So a spread metric would mean that you're looking at all the screen, at a bigger area of the screen, or how your vision is spread across the screen. And their decrease told us that as you come closer to a non-vigilant state, your spread decreases. So you're looking at a much smaller area in the screen. And one more interesting fact, when the NNI, we saw that NNI is increasing, and NNI quantifies the randomness in your vision on a screen. So we have a spread metrics that are decreasing and an NNI that is increasing. Combining both, we have a narrowing in vision to a smaller area with more randomness, hinting at approaching a non-vigilant state. This is the conclusion of our results and the numbers. Now, our third objective included adding a proactive approach in order to detect vigilance decrements and alert the guards that you are approaching a vigilance decrement state. And in this approach, we needed to embed a system in these CCTV cameras. And this system included a prediction model, or let's say simply a scheme or a code that tells the user that you are approaching a vigilance decrement state by just tracking his eyes and calculating metrics in the background. And this adaptive interface is in progress. We're working on this. Preliminary results was tested on just 2 participants. We concluded with an accuracy of 50%. Now, more participants would mean maybe better results, better accuracy. Okay. And for future work, we need more participants in order to have better information about this adaptive interface. Many could use our results on the eye tracking metrics for vigilance here, maybe to apply it on their different fields, maybe in cars vigilance detection or electronic medical records interfaces. And finally, the interesting fact about the nearest neighbor index is we introduced it here. It showed, like, as you can see, a straight line, which is really interesting. We did not see that before in literature. And this should be tested even more to get accurate results, maybe more participants. And thank you.
We'll take some questions. Say
the results section.
Last team.
The first graph under objective 1, it showed as we went along the phases, the error rate decreased and then increased again. What do you think is the possible causes for?
We think this would probably be a learning curve on how stimulus is going throughout the videos. So
Okay.
the participants are learning more while doing it for a certain amount of time, and then suddenly they become vigilant and suddenly increasing their
With time, they couldn't focus anymore on these themes. And then they didn't realize what the error started happening. And this was a 50-minute session?
Yes.
It's a 20-minute, 6 videos, then 5-minute break, then another 20-minute, 9 videos, or the vice versa.
Well, the last team can set up, please. Are they here? Thank you, guys. You are the last team? You're the advisor? You are? Okay, go ahead. Can you please come? Okay, the last session, student session, okay, of the talk of the session is by Natasha, and she's going to tell us about some creative production. All right, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, hello everyone. The first phase of my FYP was about researching how buildings can affect and induce the productivity that happens within them. And do that based on the labor patterns that is happening within the building and forcing it into productivity. So when I say labor, I want to first define labor. Labor is not just the act of producing something. It is just the effort made, the physical effort made in order to maintain our lives. So it is basically anything from washing the dishes to going on a run to actually producing something or filling an Excel sheet, and it only becomes work when it is lucrative. So the point of the projects that I will be showing you are to turn labor into a lucrative action. So I will start by the Ford factory. So the Ford factory, basically what it does is a literal translation of the pattern of the product into its production. So through the conveyor belt, it forces the laborers to just do one action, and so it acts as an authoritarian building that is just walking the product from step to step into its manufacturing process and forcing the laborer to just do this act. And now, at the same time, there were other views on productivity, and the Soviets, in fear of the workers uniting again, they were looking at the home and the domestic life of the workers, and trying to study the patterns that was happening there in order to eventually maximize the productivity that was happening in the factories. So there was this movement called the disurbanism that actually studied and made graphs out of what makes a person healthy and the daily life he goes through, from socializing to eating to resting to nature, in order to eventually be more productive in the factory. So, and they made these linear formulas that they based cities on. And Magnitogorsk, which is now an abandoned city, was based on this pattern of what they called the most productive pattern of living. And it was a linear living, and that would force the person manipulate the daily life of a laborer from the moment he leaves his house to go to the factory to produce steel. It was a steel industrial city, to the moment he comes back home. And now, years later, after working hours diminish, the focus is more on entertaining as a product, entertainment and education as a product. So this was in Britain in the 60s, and as working hours were reducing, the government wanted to make this extra time that people had and were investing into entertainment, into making it more productive. So they asked this architect, Cedric Price, to make a factory for fun. So it's called the Fun Palace. Basically, he studied the schedules of all the free times of all the users of Great Britain, and all these people that could come to this factory, and he made patterns and matrices and created this kinetic machine that is the Fun Palace that would move people from an activity to the other into the most effective use of time and the most effective fun time for these people, a fun educational time for all of these people. Now I moved to the office plan. So it became very common for offices to take the factory plan, the open plan, and it became very common in the 60s and 70s to use the open plan of a factory and for office use. And they went with this premise that leaving the floor flexible and letting the furniture make the space and letting the laborer be able to walk around all the space and put his workspace wherever he wants and talk with whoever he wants would create innovation and would create creativity. This misconception of creativity that is just being able to do anything. But this turned into chaos, and in the 80s the creation of a cubicle reorganized the corporations and offices. So as I was doing this research, I was in the architecture studio, and which is also a model of this creative, open, flexible space. So I decided to study this space. And I did this time lapse that records a picture every minute of what has happened for 12 hours of what is happening in the studio that day. And I wanted to map and understand what the space does to these interactions that are happening in the studio, and when are they productive, when are they not productive, and how are people using the space. So there's this, Ray Oldenburg says that for a person to be healthy, he needs to be in 3 spaces, so his home, the workspace, and then there's the third space. There is the space where he socializes, that he goes to after work, there is the cafe or the bar. And then I realized as I was, after this video, that the studio is actually used for these 3 spaces. So some people sleep in the studio, some people eat in the studio, some people socialize in the studio, and there's a very small part of time spent in the studio that is actually used for working. So I wanted to understand, what does it mean for a place to be dense? What does it mean in terms of productivity? What does it mean in terms of light, in terms of noise, in order for this person to be productive in such an open, flexible, creative space? So then, since people were doing all of these things and then going home to work or like socializing here and then working elsewhere, what does it mean in terms of time? What if I map the time of these laborers? So I took 4 friends that were kind enough to record 24 hours of their 12 hours of their day, and I mapped them in terms of first space, second space, and third space again. And there's also this virtual space that I call the fourth space that allows this person to be able to work from bed or socialize in his car. That is like his computer or his smartphone. And what was the relationship of space and of time to his productivity and to his use of the first space, second space, and third space? So these are some mappings. And as random as they are, I was able to collect some data in order for me to later be able to work on the architecture studio. So, and then I did another exercise, which is mapping the pattern of this one person into this one space. This is my friend. She spent 10 hours the day I recorded in the studio doing all sorts of things. And then, so from working to brainstorming to listening to music to sleeping and eating and socializing. And I decided to look at what she was doing actually in the space. How was she using the space? How was her body functioning in the space? In order to eventually give her her ultimate space where she would do anything, all of these. Since one can do anything anywhere, then what's the point of even moving around in a space? Why can't she just sit in her chair and do all of this? I wanted her to stay in this chair, so I analyzed like formally what was she doing like with her body in this chair. And what does it mean for her to be the most productive right there in her chair? So, and then I came up with this product that is a chair / wheel that is just dedicated for her pattern of work. So so there's this role that is the virtual space that is like her scrolling through Instagram. And then when she's sitting and she's working, she has like, it is the exact dimensions of what I was analyzing here. And then when she decides to get distracted and she turns, the entire wheel turns and she's sitting there scrolling through the social space and being comfortable until the social space ends and she's back to working. So she also made use of her free time because she didn't just get distracted. So so I tried to eliminate the non-productive patterns and force her into a sequence of productive pattern. So this is the actual model, the mechanical model. And then I said, what if everyone had this chair? What if everyone had this wheel? What does it mean? What are the relationship between these wheels if they're thrown in the studio for these people to be the most productive, the most creative there? So, but then does this mean the entire, like, does this mean the entire space is obsolete? Does this mean the city is obsolete? I decided not to take this stand. I decided that we still need infrastructure, we still need to move around. And the proof of this is these people were going home to do this stuff or going to a bar to work there. And it means something. They weren't just sitting in bed doing all of this. So whatever forces these people to move from a space to another to get all their relationship to this infrastructure is actually relevant. And so I started studying the infrastructure itself, the macro infrastructure, the relationship of the School of Architecture to the campus, to the city, and then the relationship of the micro infrastructure, which is the machines and the power, water, everything that runs through the building, and the relationship with these laborers. And then, not just that, my last point was to look at the relationships of the laborers to each other, and as this being the main inducer of creativity. So what does it mean if a person is sitting in his own space, in an open space? From the mapping I did on the plan, I realized when a person is just sitting there on a chair, people will come and socialize with him. Like, this is the architecture of his chair and table. And then what does it mean if I close him? Then he gets isolated. The people that created boards around them just spent an hour in the studio. So he got isolated, dressless. What does it mean? What if the walls are glass? People will look at what he's doing. Maybe it will inspire them. Then he will see activity around him. Will this make him distracted, or will this, on the contrary, like give him impulse to work? And then etc. What does it mean for people to work next to each other and play and levels? And then I did this matrix of playing with all of these and trying to reorganize all these cubicles, and then making iterations out of them. And so this is how I imagine a studio that is the most productive, that is the most creative. It is this relationship of the laborers with the infrastructure, with each other, and the relationship of the building to the bigger picture, to the campus, to the city. So now my FYP2 is I'm remodeling the architecture studio we have here in the UB based on this research I did on the activity of the students.
So we have time for a couple of questions. Hannah?
There's quite a bit of interesting research and thinking process associated with your project. If it was not a renovation project of an existing space, to what extent can your approach actually inform the configuration of space? Because it remains, you've gotten to the wheel, which is an interesting questioning of the setup, but how about the space itself? Can your work and your thinking and your research identify new forms of space?
Yeah, basically I'm using the renovation of the school as a case study. So what I'm doing is creating these spaces for different kinds of activities, and then making actual objects that eventually become structured, and eventually the building becomes this combination of these objects and the relationship they have with each other. So my entire research is about the relationship of the space to the person that is working in the space, and this is what I'm trying to explore, even though it gets messy sometimes. But this is where my research will lead eventually. So I am looking at real spaces and trying out the pattern of a person in the space, and then trying another space, and then getting different, I'm asking them different sets of questions, which is leading to my space for a certain kind of activity.
Other questions? Okay, let's thank our speaker. Thank you. Our last speaker is not a student. but we had a very interesting talk by Dr. Von Haren, and Dr. Ghaddar is going to introduce her. Okay. Okay.
We thought we will take the advantage of the presence of Dr. Von Haren to speak to us about EU internship and exchange opportunities. Just to give you something about her background, Professor Von Haren is the chair of the Institute for Environmental Planning at Leibniz University, Hanover in Germany. Her expertise is on landscape planning. Sorry, the light is too dark here, so I'm hardly seeing what I'm reading. All right. Her expertise is on landscape planning, nature conservation and agriculture, impact regulation under environmental considerations and renewable energy technologies. So I'd like to ask Christina to just come here and give us something about her.
Thank you very much for this introduction and also for the opportunity to speak here. I came here mainly because I was interested in a cooperation in the renewable energy sector, but now I have talked to so many people. I have come to know to PhD students, and this morning I was very impressed by the achievements of the alumni, but also here by your students, that I think it really would be worthwhile to, and probably for both sides, the University of Hanover and for your university, to deepen the cooperation more and to also for us to tap on this very impressive body of knowledge and engagement, ambitions, which I find here. So I'm quite glad that I can give you some organizational information about how students from here, but also faculty, can get funds from the European Union, but also from the German government in order to support such an exchange. And I will introduce shortly the opportunities which we have in Germany about such an exchange, and then I will give you a short introduction into Hanover University and particularly in my faculty, which is the Faculty of Architecture, Landscape and Technical Education. So the most important program we have in Europe dealing with student and faculty exchange is the Erasmus program, and it's I think this exists since the beginning of the 90s or something like that. When I was a student, there was almost no possibility for any exchange and it was very hard to go abroad to study there, but now we have really great opportunities to doing that, and I think it is very good news that Lebanon is part, and also the University of Beirut is part of this exchange network. However, when you want to cooperate in this respect and send students from the American University of Beirut, for instance, to Hanover, we'll need a bilateral agreement, so we will have to work a little bit on that part. But there is already a national office for Erasmus in Lebanon, so the preconditions are very good, I think. The partner countries, which are open or would be open to you, is the whole European Union, plus the neighboring countries, the South Mediterranean countries, the Eastern European countries, and Western Balkan countries. So there's a very big range of countries which are organized in this network, but as I said, you always need the bilateral agreements of schools usually, not only of the universities. So what are the advantages for the students? You can stay at another university for 3 to 12 months, and a lot of our students take advantage of this, going to other universities in Europe. But there are also traineeship work placements, 2 to 12 months as possible. I don't know by own experience very well how this works, but I know a little bit how the students' exchange works. The Erasmus exchange covers all cycles from BA, MA to PhD, but mostly BA and MA is the main objective, because there are other ways how to fund the PhDs. I think it is also important to say that when you do such a bilateral agreement between the universities or the faculties, there is a very structured way how the curriculum will be exchanged, so that the ECTS will be guaranteed after your stay in Germany, for instance. The Erasmus Charter, that's the main goal and objective, which is the basis of this whole cooperation program, points this out. There's full recognition of all the lectures you take from in the partner university. They have to be accepted in your home university and vice versa. No discrimination of any kind. No fees charged. So some universities, of course, as your university will charge usually fees from their students. The German universities don't charge fees at all. The English universities charge quite high fees. But in Erasmus, every university is equal, and the student exchange is not combined with paying any fees on a kind of collective, I would say collective agreement, because of course some universities will have more ingoings, some universities from the Balkan will have much more outgoings, because not so many people from Germany will go there. But there has been a collective agreement of the European states not to look at the bilateral balance, but to have this whole European balance. And we think it's always a kind of cycle. Good deeds will come back sometime, and you maybe not by the same party which received it, but somehow it will contribute to the benefits of all. So the mobile students will be prepared as to language, documents, logistics. This is really great nowadays. When I went abroad when I was a student, I had to do everything by myself. It was really a lot of time I had to invest, and this is very comfortable right now. There will be assistance for visas, for accommodation, insurance, and so on and so on. And you will have a kind of mentor at each department who will help you with the study program and support you. There's also the possibility for staff members to go on such an exchange for 5 days to 2 months, and the staff is usually teaching for a week or so, and also this staff exchange is meant to support the advancement of the different training programs, so that there is an exchange of competencies. Now I come to a program which is very dear to me personally, because as I said, when I was a student, there was very little opportunities to go to another university, especially because I was on a course in landscape and environmental planning, which was restricted as to the number of students who could participate, because when I studied environmental sciences, we had this big environmental movement in Germany, so many students wanted to study environmental sciences, and we had, I think, something like 500 applicants and only 80 could be taken. So when you went outside, your place would have been taken, and there was no place we could go. We could only exchange on a bilateral, individual contract. So I decided to go on a practical work experience program, and the German Academic Exchange Service has already then had a very nice program which would coordinate students who wanted to go abroad with companies who wanted to take a trainee. And this IRS, the International Association for the Exchange of Students for Technical Experience, is a worldwide program in more than 80 countries. It is established, and it serves per year more than 4,000 students, 3,000 employers are involved, and 1,000 academic institutions. And it's not only that you work in another country, which is a great experience usually because you are not in a kind of academic bubble, but you are really involved in everyday life, and you learn a lot also in terms of practical skills. But the program also includes social and intercultural education programs. So you have meetings with students from other countries, and there's a lot of international networking and employers activities going on there. Also good news, the AUB is already a full member of this program, so it's really recommended to do something like that, and also of course to come to Germany and come to know, to at least in some fields, the great working environment there. Then we have in Germany the German Academic Exchange Service, which grants scholarships for students who want to study in Germany. And there also here there is an information center in Beirut. So if you are a good student, a brilliant student, you can apply for getting your stay in Germany funded also by the German Academic Exchange Service, and especially for PhDs. This is a great opportunity to go abroad. You have to be accepted by a German professor, but I think the University of Hanover, they have a good infrastructure in this respect, and you have to find out whom you want to study with, especially as a PhD, maybe for a year, maybe for 6 months, that is possible. And I think it is not so hard to get the funding for this, for your stay abroad. And multiple activities are possible, not only the exchange of students, but also we have a project with several universities in Central Africa who want to build up environmental landscape studies, and a colleague of mine is kind of building up the curriculum and everything with them, and this is going on for 3 years now. So when you have a good idea how to foster higher education, also the DAAD can finance such a thing, including vocational training, which is also something I think is very, very helpful when you go out of your academic realm. Who does the work, especially in mechanical engineering and so on. These people have to be trained very well. It depends a lot of the accuracy and the quality of work which is practically done, not only on the engineers. And as you may know, in Germany we have kind of invented this vocational training since the Middle Ages, and it has evolved since then, and we have a very strong tradition in that. finally, this part of my talk, I would like to conclude with giving you an overview of providers of scholarships inside Germany, because there are numerous, but they are and they are also open to foreigners, not at least most of them, not only to German citizens, but they require really excellence and engagement, ambitions, and so on. So we have party-affiliated, political party-affiliated foundations, and you must not be a member of the respective political party. For instance, the Green Party gives scholarship, the Conservatives give every party has such a foundation, but they want you to kind of subscribe to their basic aims, but it's very easy, because usually these aims of all the parties are very nice. What they do in practice is something else, but as I said, you don't have to be a member of these parties, but you have to be highly motivated civic, there must be some civic engagement proved, and you must be a very well-performing student. So they want to kind of fund the future leaders of the country. Then we have religious organizations, or the churches, you might say, and not only the Protestants and Catholics, but also Jewish, Muslim, and Muslim foundations. And in this case, you have to be a member of the religious community. This might change, because there has been a court decision, very fresh, I think last week or the week before, that the churches are no longer allowed to, when they employ someone, to demand that the employee is a member of the church. This is very interesting, and this might be also apply now for students, I'm not sure. Then corporate foundations like Mercedes and so on, they fund sometimes studies of their employees on the job, but also of talented engineers. Then federal states funds go to students in precarious financial circumstances. So this is, you always have to have, oh, what did I do? Okay. So, but you always have to have good grades and socially oriented organizations. And finally, research institutions. The last is only something for PhD or especially for postdocs, I would say, because this is for high achieving students who, and everything depends on the quality of your research proposal there. So, what can I say about my home university, the Leibniz University of Hanover? It has been founded a little bit earlier than your university, 15 years earlier, something like that, as a Royal Institute of Technology. So there's a lot in common. There's a strong orientation of the University of Hanover towards technical sciences, towards engineering. And yeah, we pride ourselves to be that Leibniz somehow was a kind of core person in Hanover to establish sciences there. Leibniz, you might know, he has, and you can see there in our logo, he has invented the binary code, which is, of course, the basis for all computer sciences, and we have it in his handwriting in our logo, and he invited that at the end of the 17th century. That is very, I think it is very, and in Hanover you can still see the first computer he built. It's a calculation machine, It's in the university, and yeah, it's amazing what he did at that time. So Hanover University, we have a nice main building, as you saw. It's a former castle. Hanover has 3 castles because there was a king who was also the king of England for quite a long time. And in one of these castles, the university was put. And but we have not only one university, we have also the medical school and the veterinary school, which are very well known, I think, internationally. And we have a school for music, theatre and media, which is also famous in Germany. And then, as I said, the Leibniz University. But as we have these different schools, we don't have one big campus, but we have something we call the university line, and it goes through all the city. And so we are not so centralized. Our buildings and students have to go longer ways than here. The university has 9 faculties: architecture and landscapes. I will go deeper into that. Civil engineering and geodesy, I think is the right word. Economics and management, electrical engineering and computer science, humanities, law, mathematics and physics, mechanical engineering and natural sciences. Natural sciences is a huge faculty, and so is the humanities faculty. Students, we have 29,000 students at the Leibniz University at present, and each year, or each year, or we don't know how many students arrived for the summer semester, but in winter 1,500 students started at the LUH. And about 5,000 staff, and at our faculty we have 230 staff members. Leibniz University, I said, we have a focus on technical engineering things. So Leibniz University is a member of the so-called TU9, where all the kind of famous technical universities in Germany are united and also try to cooperate and exchange knowledge and also students. Now the research structure in our university is, of course, that the different departments and faculties have their research lines, but what I find very nice is that we have also cross-cutting interdisciplinary organizations which are funded by the university. You have to apply for that and have a good proposal, and then you can advance from a research initiative to a research center, and finally to a Leibniz research school. And that is very helpful, and was very helpful also for me, for my interlinkages with partners from the other faculties. You can find very easily partners which you can work together with and have adjacent interests. And here you see our no initiative here, but these are the centers which we have, and you can see we have Forwind, that's an energy initiative, and then Forwind is a center which has a lot of also partners outside the university in producing wind turbines. And then we have the somehow a little bit overarching LIFE initiative, Energy 2050, which is very important. The most well-known and the research centers with the most money and their schools are Quest, which is a physical thing, and it was a part of the excellence initiative of the German research foundations. and people took part in, together with the Max, no, not the, was it the Max Planck Institute for Gravitation Physics? Yes, it may be. They were part of the research team who supported the Nobel Prize winners of last year. Yeah, doesn't matter, but they are very highly reputed, I would say. So you can see we have a lot of different subjects, and this picture gives you, I think, a very good impression of what the main research lines of the universities are. And I myself, I'm a member and a founder of TRUST, the Center for Rural or Spatial Transformation, and I will tell you a little bit more about that later on. So, the Faculty of Architecture and Landscape is located in Herrenhausen, very close to the main building, but we have our own wonderful green space. That are the royal gardens of the former kings of Hanover, and it's one of the greatest and biggest and oldest Baroque garden in Germany. And we, as you can see, we have design and natural sciences together in our faculty, and we have three study programs. One is landscape architecture and environmental planning, and you can have a master. I will come to the master afterwards. One is technical education, and technical education is educating the teachers who will teach the students, who will be the teachers in the schools for vocational training afterwards. So they, very often these students, they have already, or usually I think they must have their own education in some technical profession. So they have been on a vocational training before they become teachers, or before they study at our university, and then in the university they get further scientific qualities, but also they learn how to teach. And then we have architecture and urban design, which is rated first as to student studying quality in Germany. So there are a lot of applicants, and especially in architecture, a lot of students want to go to Hanover. We have 33 professors and 155 other academic staff, and a lot of support staff, and 1,500 students, and we have research projects, and only in environmental planning we have about 1.5 million per year in third-party funding. Now, as I said, we have different study programs. I already introduced the bachelor courses, architecture, then technical education, and landscape architecture and environmental planning. And we have 5 master programs in architecture and urban design, master of education, master of landscape, architecture, master in environmental planning, so our students specialize, and master in territorial development. The last master is completely in English. The other ones have, the lectures are usually in German, but some lectures in English. But we make sure that incoming students can get their 30 credit points per semester in English lessons. So we have a kind of, we offer enough English lessons and a program so everybody can, also an incoming non-German speaker can study there. Incomings may choose from the program in our faculty, but they can also go to other faculties, and 1/3 of their credits can come from other faculties. So there is the opportunity to look into the university and choose whatever you want, which may benefit you in your study or will be of benefit here at home. We have slightly different times for our semesters. Our semester goes from October through March, but the lecture times when people have to be present is about first to second week in April through, this is a little bit strange, usually, there it is, second week in April through second week in July, and the examinations are also in July. So when someone wants to come, you have to be in Hanover usually from the second week in October to the 1st of February or to mid of February, or in summer come in April, and then you can go home in the summer. This doesn't match the Anglo-Saxon system, but it matches, for instance, the French. So in Europe, every country has its tradition. The faculty has a lot of support facilities like computer labs, 3D visualization labs. The students get in architecture, but we have also a lot of space for students where they can work. Computer pools. There's also workshops where students can work on models or whatever, or do photography, things like that. And we have a specialized library for technology. And let me say a little bit about the research. As I said, we have founded this research center Trust, and 7 of the 9 faculties of the university are participating in this research center for spatial transformation. And by that we could assemble a very nice interdisciplinary profile with very good experts, not only in spatial structures and ecosystem service, which we can do by ourselves, but also in we have this expertise from the humanity and economics, and also the civil engineers are very active in this research initiative. These soil scientists, it's really a great group. And we said that we want to advance theories in this area, but also the knowledge transfer into practice. And that I found is here also a very important quest. Now the research center Energy for Energy Life 2050. I couldn't have such a nice. We don't have such a nice picture there as for Trust, but you can see that a lot of the very well-known technicians in Hanover University are taking part from all kinds of fields, knowledge fields. Here the input of social science is not so strong as in Trust, but it is a great cooperation between us and the technical science, but also between very different technical science and economy in this center. Then we have another research initiative. It didn't become a center yet, which is dealing with gender in different contexts. And we have a research center about garden arts and landscape architecture, and especially about history of public green space. Now, we want to attract also international students, and especially, of course, brilliant students, but and I just want to show you a little bit of Hanover. It's a very nice town to live in. It's very comfortable. It has a great public transport system. There's a lot of pubs for students and so on going on. We have these castles, as I said, in the Baroque garden. This is our new town hall, as it's called, because we have also a second one, which is medieval age. And we have, nice leisure and art facilities. It's a very green city, and I think a good place to be a student and to work as a student or PhD. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for telling us about these opportunities. Questions? Okay, so yes, Nasreen, go ahead.
In Hanover is, I don't know the staff ratio, but I know it costs a lot. It's a very expensive, per study place it's very expensive, but also because there's a lot of labs and things like that. And here we have a kind of course the humanities are per student much cheaper than when labs and things are involved. That's clear.
Thank you. Thank you for staying. This concludes the session.